The Forgotten Legend. For over 3 centuries, the barren moon of Lithar had remained untouched by time, its surface scarred by ancient battles and cosmic storms. Legends whispered among galactic travelers spoke of an alien princess, a symbol of hope for a long-lost civilization. Trapped in eternal sleep, many sought her resting place, hoping to uncover her secrets or claim her power. None returned. The moon was labeled cursed, a place where even the bravest dared not tread. But Marcus was not one for legends, a human explorer with a stubborn streak. He believed in what he could see and touch. His ship, the Stellar Nomad, was a rusted patchwork of salvaged parts, barely held together by his ingenuity and luck. He was not looking for adventure or fame. He was looking for a reason to keep going. And fate, or perhaps something greater, had brought him here. The day started like any other. Marcus had been scanning for mineral deposits on the outskirts of an asteroid field when his ship's navigation systems malfunctioned. The controls locked, the engine sputtered, and before he knew it, the Stellar Nomad was plummeting through Lithar's thin atmosphere. He managed to stabilize the descent just enough to avoid total destruction, but his landing was far from graceful. Smoke billowed from the ship as it skidded across the moon's rocky terrain. Cursing under his breath, Marcus donned his environmental suit and stepped out onto the moon's surface. The air was thin and bitterly cold, the ground a lifeless expanse of gray and black. Yet something about the place felt alive. His scanner, despite its limited range, picked up a faint energy pulse in the distance. It was irregular, almost like a heartbeat. "Great," Marcus muttered, tapping the screen. Another glitch. But the pulse didn't stop. If anything, it grew stronger the closer he walked toward the horizon. Against his better judgment, Marcus decided to follow it. What else was there to do? His ship needed repairs, and whatever was generating the signal might offer some clue, or at least a distraction. Hours passed as he trudged across the desolate landscape. The terrain grew steeper, the ground beneath his boots turning into jagged obsidian-like rock. Shadows lengthened as Lithar's distant sun dipped below the horizon, casting the moon into twilight. And then he saw it. A massive structure rose from the ground, its silhouette sharp and unnatural against the darkening sky. It was an alien temple, ancient and foreboding, its walls covered in strange carvings that shimmered faintly in the dim light. Marcus hesitated at the entrance, his instincts screaming at him to turn back. But curiosity, or perhaps something stronger, pushed him forward. The air inside the temple was cold and still, heavy with the weight of forgotten history. Marcus's flashlight danced across the walls, illuminating glyphs and symbols he couldn't begin to understand. They seemed to pulse faintly, as though reacting to his presence. The deeper he ventured, the stronger the energy signal became. Finally, he reached the heart of the temple. In the center of the massive chamber stood a crystal chamber, its surface smooth and transparent like glass, but glowing with a golden hue. Inside, a figure lay motionless. She was breathtaking, even in her stillness. The alien princess was unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. Her skin a pale, iridescent blue, her long hair shimmering like threads of silver. She wore a regal gown, adorned with intricate patterns that seemed to shift and change as he looked at them. Her eyes were closed, her expression serene, as though she were merely asleep. Marcus stared, unsure of what to do. The chamber was flawless, untouched by time. How could she have survived for 300 years? And why was she here? As he approached the chamber, his scanner went haywire, its readings jumping erratically. He frowned, tapping it, but then something else caught his attention. The carvings on the walls began to glow brighter, their light converging toward the chamber. Words in an alien language appeared, translating into something his mind could understand. Only a heart that defies the stars may awaken the lost. A chill ran down Marcus's spine. The words seemed to echo in his head, resonating with a force that was both unsettling and strangely comforting. He reached out instinctively, his hand hovering just inches from the crystal surface. Before he could decide whether to touch it, the ground beneath him trembled. The entire temple seemed to come alive, the walls vibrating with energy. The carvings flashed brighter, and a low hum filled the air. Marcus stumbled back, his heart pounding. And then, for a brief moment, her eyes opened. They glowed with a golden light, locking onto his with an intensity that froze him in place. He thought he saw her lips move, whispering something he couldn't hear. But just as quickly as it happened, the light faded and her eyes closed once more. The chamber went silent. The carvings dimmed. The energy pulse vanished. Marcus stood there, breathless, staring at the sleeping princess. Something had changed, though he couldn't explain what. The legends had warned of this place, of the danger it held. But now Marcus knew one thing for certain. The princess was waiting. And for some reason, she had reacted to him. What had he just unleashed? The crystal prison. The chamber was silent, but Marcus could feel the weight of something far greater than himself pressing down on him. The alien princess lay still, encased in the smooth crystal that separated her from the world. Though the energy around the temple had dimmed, Marcus's heart pounded louder than before. He paced around the chamber, his boots echoing against the stone floor. The walls, lined with ancient carvings, seemed to follow him, eyes in the dark, watching silently. He tried to shake the feeling. "This is insane," Marcus muttered under his breath. "I should leave while I still can." But he didn't move. His gaze kept drifting back to the princess. There was something unsettling, yet magnetic, about her presence. The crystal was perfectly transparent, yet beneath the surface, her features shimmered faintly as though she existed halfway between two worlds. Her face was calm, but Marcus felt as if she could open her eyes at any moment and see right through him. He knelt beside the chamber, studying the faint golden veins that ran along the crystal's surface. His fingers brushed against it lightly. The material wasn't cold, as he expected. It was warm, almost like skin. The sensation made him pull his hand back instantly. "Right, definitely cursed," Marcus whispered, rubbing his hands together nervously. Yet something inside him urged him to stay. His scanner beeped softly at his side, snapping him out of his thoughts. He glanced at the display. The energy pulse had returned. It flickered weakly, but steadily. Marcus frowned. "Why would this place react to me?" he wondered aloud. "I'm just a scavenger. There's nothing special about me." But the temple seemed to disagree. The carvings on the wall shifted again, glowing softly as if listening. Marcus exhaled and stood. He began to circle the chamber slowly, running his hands across the alien symbols etched into the stone. Most were indecipherable, but near the chamber's base, his fingers brushed against a panel that felt different, smooth, seamless. It clicked under his touch. With a low rumble, part of the floor slid away, revealing a small pedestal with an ancient device resting on top. Marcus lifted it carefully. It was shaped like a sphere, cold and metallic, with faint blue lights swirling inside. As soon as he touched it, his vision blurred. The temple dissolved around him, and Marcus found himself standing in an alien city. Towers of silver and gold stretched high into a sky filled with stars. Crowds of tall, elegant beings filled the streets, their skin glowing faintly under the light of twin moons. In the distance, he saw the princess standing on a balcony, her hair flowing in the wind. She looked over the city with a determined expression, as if preparing for something inevitable. And then the sky darkened. Ships unlike anything Marcus had ever seen descended from the heavens, massive and menacing, blocking out the stars. Sirens echoed through the streets as the crowd scattered. Fire rained down, and the city was engulfed in chaos. The vision snapped back to the present. Marcus stumbled backward, nearly dropping the sphere. His breathing was ragged, sweat trickling down his temple. That wasn't normal. He glanced back at the chamber. The princess hadn't moved, but now he understood. This wasn't just a legend. This temple was a tomb a prison built to keep her safe from the war he had witnessed. Marcus returned to the chamber and knelt again, holding the sphere close to the crystal. It pulsed faintly, sensing with the golden veins. "This must be the key," Marcus whispered. But the question lingered in his mind. Was he meant to awaken her, or was she never supposed to rise again? His hand hovered over the sphere, hesitating. He thought of the destruction in his vision, the alien city crumbling beneath a storm of fire. Yet the princess's face remained peaceful. Marcus tightened his grip around the sphere and placed it carefully on the pedestal beside the chamber. The device lit up instantly. Lines of light traced from the pedestal to the crystal, illuminating the carvings across the temple walls. The air grew heavy. A deep hum filled the chamber, and Marcus felt as though the temple itself was holding its breath. Slowly, cracks began to form along the crystal's surface. Marcus rose to his feet, taking a cautious step back as the chamber trembled. The cracks widened, spreading like spider webs. With a soft hiss, the crystal shattered, dissolving into golden mist that scattered through the air. The princess collapsed forward, her body falling into Marcus's arms before he could react. He knelt, lowering her gently to the ground. Her breathing was faint but steady. Marcus stared down at her, unsure of what to say or do. Before he could process what had happened, her eyes flickered open, glowing the same golden hue he had seen in his vision. She gazed up at him, dazed but calm. "You are not like the others," she whispered softly, her voice as ancient as the temple around them. Marcus swallowed hard. "I get that a lot." Awakening the past. The princess slept soundlessly, but Marcus could feel the weight of her presence growing with each passing hour. He had set up a makeshift camp within the temple's central chamber, unwilling to leave her side. Outside, the barren moon stretched endlessly beneath the dark sky, offering no answers to the storm of questions swirling in his mind. Marcus sat cross-legged near the crystal shards that once encased her, watching the faint rise and fall of her chest as she lay on a mat he fashioned from the fabric of his emergency kit. She looked fragile, too delicate for the vast and unforgiving galaxy that waited beyond the temple walls. And yet, he knew better. She was no ordinary being. Whatever power pulsed beneath her skin, Marcus had felt it the moment the crystal shattered. A presence, ancient and vast, stirred within her. He poked at the fire he built from salvaged reactor fuel, its blue glow casting strange shadows along the temple walls. "What happens now?" Marcus muttered to himself. He had no answer. The sphere that triggered the chamber's release lay dormant beside him, its lights now extinguished. Whatever force had guided him this far was silent. His gaze drifted toward the princess again. For the 100th time, he wondered why she reacted to him, and not the hundreds of explorers who had come before. Why him? Before Marcus could lose himself in thought, a faint whisper brushed against his mind, like the edge of a forgotten memory. His eyes snapped toward the princess, but she hadn't moved. Her lips remained still. The whisper came again, clearer this time. "The stars remember you." Marcus stiffened, scanning the room. He was alone. He rubbed the back of his neck, trying to shake the creeping sensation running down his spine. "Get it together, Marcus," he muttered. "It's just a temple. Old tech, that's all." But as he spoke, the carvings along the walls began to glow once more, faint tendrils of golden light weaving across the stone like threads of silk. Marcus rose to his feet, heart pounding as the light coalesced around the crystal shards scattered across the floor. The shards trembled, vibrating softly, before dissolving into mist that drifted toward the sleeping princess. He stepped back, unsure of what to do. The mist circled her, tracing faint patterns in the air, symbols Marcus recognized from the temple's entrance. Slowly, her eyes opened. Golden irises locked onto him, but this time, there was clarity. She propped herself up on one elbow, studying him with quiet intensity. "You are human," she said, her voice smooth yet heavy with age. Marcus nodded hesitantly. "Yeah, I guess I am." Her gaze didn't waver. "You should not be here." "Tell me about it," Marcus said, crossing his arms. "I wasn't exactly planning on crash landing on a cursed moon." The princess shifted, sitting up fully. The air around her seemed to ripple, bending slightly as if reality itself hesitated to touch her. "Who are you?" she asked softly. "Marcus, explorer, salvager, sometimes," he replied. "And you?" She hesitated for a long moment, as if the question itself was unfamiliar. Finally, she spoke. "Ilara, last heir of the Zetherian Empire." Marcus scratched his head, squatting near the fire again. "Never heard of it." "Sorry." Ilara's golden eyes flickered with something he couldn't place. "Sorrow, perhaps, or resignation." "You would not have," she said quietly. "It has been a long time." Silence hung between them like a fragile thread, neither willing to break it. Marcus finally spoke. "I saw something when I picked up that sphere. A city, burning. Ships attacking from the sky. Was that your home?" Ilara's gaze dropped to the ground. Her hand rested lightly on the pedestal beside her, tracing its edges with her fingertips. "It was," she admitted, "until the war consumed it." Marcus leaned forward, curious but cautious. "What happened?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, Ilara's eyes drifted toward the carvings on the temple walls, watching the golden symbols shift and flow like liquid light. "The Zetherians were guardians of balance," she began. "Our people could harness the energy of the stars, weaving their power into our cities, our ships, our very lives. But there were those who sought to corrupt that power." Marcus frowned. "The ships I saw attacking your city, was that them?" Ilara nodded, her expression darkening. "They were called the Velnar, a race born from war and shadows. They fed on destruction, twisting the light of the stars into weapons that could unmake entire worlds." Marcus felt a chill settle in his bones. "And you? Why were you put in stasis?" Her gaze met his once more. "Because I am the last." Marcus swallowed hard. Ilara continued, her voice soft but unyielding. "My father sealed me away before the Velnar breached the final defenses. He believed I could awaken when the galaxy had healed, when hope was ready to rise again." Marcus couldn't help but feel the weight of those words pressing down on him. "So why now?" he asked. "Why did the temple react to me?" Ilara studied him carefully, tilting her head slightly. "I do not know," she admitted, "but the fact that you stand here means something has shifted. The Velnar may have returned." Marcus clenched his fists. "Great," he sighed. "So now I'm mixed up in an ancient war between cosmic guardians and star-eating monsters." A faint smile tugged at Ilara's lips. "It would seem so, Marcus." He shook his head, unable to suppress a grin. "Well, I've been in worse situations." The awakening. The stillness of the temple was deceptive, masking the storm brewing beneath the surface. Marcus stood beside the alien princess, Ilara, watching as she adjusted to the unfamiliar surroundings of the present. Though her body had been trapped in crystal for 3 centuries, her mind was sharp, too sharp for someone who had only just awakened. Marcus didn't fully trust her. Not yet. He leaned against the ancient pedestal that once held the crystalline chamber. His arms were crossed, eyes locked on Ilara, as she gazed around the temple, running her fingers along the golden carvings that seemed to shift beneath her touch. The air grew heavier with every second she remained awake, as if the temple itself was adjusting to her presence. "So, what now?" Marcus asked, breaking the silence. Ilara didn't turn to face him. Her eyes lingered on the symbols, watching them glow faintly under her fingertips. "The temple was meant to be a sanctuary, a place where time could not reach me," she said softly. "But it is not as it should be." Marcus frowned. "What do you mean?" Her hand paused over one of the larger symbols etched into the stone. The moment her palm hovered above it, the symbol twisted, rearranging itself into a shape Marcus didn't recognize. The floor trembled beneath them, a low hum resonating from deep within the temple walls. Ilara's expression hardened. The enemy. They have returned. Marcus pushed off the pedestal, his muscles tensing instinctively. You're sure about that? I am. Ilara turned toward him, her golden eyes glowing faintly. The energy I sense, it is Velnar technology. They are searching for something. Marcus exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. Fantastic. I barely have enough fuel to leave this moon, and now we're about to get vaporized by ancient star-eating monsters. Ilara's lips twitched in what Marcus could only describe as the faintest hint of amusement. Your pessimism is refreshing, she said. Glad I could entertain, Marcus replied. Despite the sarcasm, he couldn't shake the sense of unease settling into his bones. Ilara's calm demeanor was unnerving, as if she had been expecting this all along. He adjusted the strap of his gear and glanced toward the temple's entrance. Outside, the desolate landscape stretched endlessly beneath the pale light of distant stars. There was no sign of approaching ships, but Marcus knew better than to trust appearances. We should leave, Marcus said finally. If the Velnar are on their way, I don't plan on sticking around to meet them. Ilara didn't move. Running will not stop them. The Velnar do not chase their prey. They consume everything in their path. Marcus's stomach twisted. Great. Any bright ideas, Princess? She stepped closer to him, her gaze unwavering. You released me from the crystal chamber. That connection means something, she said. I believe you may be the key to restoring what was lost. Marcus raised a brow. And what exactly was lost? Ilara's eyes darkened. Hope. Marcus groaned. Seriously, I'm not a chosen hero or anything. I'm just a guy who crashed his ship in the wrong place at the wrong time. And yet you are here, Ilara said quietly. Her words hung in the air, and Marcus found himself unable to argue. Before he could respond, the temple shook violently, causing loose shards of crystal to tumble across the floor. Marcus stumbled but caught himself against the pedestal. His scanner blared to life, red warning signals flashing across the screen. Unidentified ships detected. Incoming. Marcus's heart pounded. They're here. Ilara stepped beside him, peering down at the scanner's display. Her eyes narrowed. Only 3 ships, she said. A scouting party. Marcus didn't like the sound of that. Scouting for what? He asked. Ilara's gaze met his, and Marcus felt the weight of centuries of knowledge in her eyes. They are searching for me. Marcus's breath caught. If they find me, Ilara continued, they will send for the fleet. Marcus cursed under his breath. So how do we stop them? Ilara moved swiftly, her hand pressing against the pedestal. The carvings around them lit up, and Marcus watched in awe as a holographic map of the temple's underground structure appeared in the air before them. There is an energy core beneath this temple, Ilara said, pointing to a glowing spot at the center of the map. If activated, it can cloak this place from the Velnar sensors, but it will not last long. Marcus grinned. Cloaking device. Now we're talking. Without hesitation, Ilara began walking toward the far side of the chamber. Marcus hurried after her, his boots crunching against the stone floor. As they moved deeper into the temple, the hum of the approaching ships grew louder. Marcus couldn't help but glance over his shoulder, half expecting Velnar soldiers to storm in at any moment. You sure about this core? Marcus asked, trying to mask the nervous edge in his voice. I am, Ilara replied. They descended a narrow flight of stairs, the walls narrowing as the carvings faded into darkness. At the bottom, they emerged into a vast underground chamber. A massive crystalline core stood at the center, glowing faintly. Ilara approached it, placing her hands against the surface. The core flickered, responding to her touch. Marcus stood by, watching carefully. The ground trembled once more. Ilara, Marcus said cautiously. I need more time, she replied, her focus unbroken. Marcus tightened his grip on his blaster, scanning the darkened edges of the chamber. The hum of the Velnar ships was growing louder. They were running out of time. The bond and the threat. The crystalline core pulsed softly beneath Ilara's hands, faint lines of golden energy spiraling out like veins through the ancient stone beneath them. The underground chamber hummed with raw power, but Marcus could feel it. Something wasn't right. He shifted uneasily, his eyes darting toward the darkened entrance they had come through. The Velnar ships were above ground now. His scanner confirmed it, though no landing parties had breached the temple. Not yet. Ilara, Marcus muttered, stepping closer to her. Whatever you're doing, can you do it faster? Ilara's eyes remained closed, her expression calm but focused. I am stabilizing the core's energy signature, she said softly. It must be precise, or the cloaking will fail. Marcus grimaced. Well, we might not get that chance. They're getting closer. She opened one eye, casting him a sideways glance. Your impatience is noted, Marcus. He exhaled sharply, pacing around the chamber like a caged animal. Despite the danger, part of him marveled at the room's design. The core towered over them, suspended by intricate crystalline supports that curved like ancient roots. Everything seemed too perfect, untouched by time, as though waiting for this very moment. Marcus paused, staring at Ilara. There was something strange about the way the core responded to her. He had seen plenty of alien technology in his years as a scavenger, but nothing like this. It wasn't just machinery. It felt alive, bonded to her in some intangible way. Why does this place react to you? Marcus asked, keeping his voice low. Ilara opened her other eye, still holding her hands against the core. I was born from this temple, she said quietly. The energy you see, it flows within me, as it did my ancestors. Marcus frowned. So, you're connected to this thing, in ways you would not understand. Marcus arched a brow. Try me. Ilara hesitated for a moment before finally lowering her hands. The core's light dimmed but remained active, casting faint shadows along the chamber walls. She turned to him, her golden eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. The Zetherians did not just build temples. We wove them from the energy of the stars themselves, Ilara explained. These cores are not mere machines. They are extensions of our people, living constructs tied to our essence. As heir to the throne, I share that bond. Marcus scratched his head. Okay, so, star-powered temples. Got it. He paused. But that doesn't explain why I was able to open the chamber. Ilara stepped closer, studying him carefully. I have been asking myself the same question, she admitted. Marcus shifted under her gaze. I'm not special, Ilara. I was just the guy who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Perhaps. Ilara's tone was soft, but there was a weight behind her words. Before Marcus could press further, his scanner buzzed sharply. A red light flashed on the display. Movement detected. One life form approaching. Marcus tensed, gripping his blaster. We've got company. Ilara's gaze sharpened. Velnar? Not sure, Marcus replied, holding the scanner up. Only reading one of them. If they were Velnar, wouldn't there be more? Ilara's expression darkened. Not necessarily. The Velnar use agents, operatives who scout ahead before the main force arrives. Marcus swallowed hard. Wonderful. So now we're dealing with spies. The sound of footsteps echoed faintly from the corridor leading back to the temple's surface. Marcus raised his blaster, aiming toward the entrance. The blue fire of the crystal core behind them cast shifting shadows across the stone, and Marcus kept his breathing steady. A figure emerged from the darkness, draped in a sleek, metallic cloak that shimmered faintly under the light. The stranger's face was obscured by a reflective mask, but Marcus could see the faint outline of their eyes. Cold and calculating. Ilara Zetheria, the figure said in a voice that echoed unnaturally, layered as if multiple voices spoke at once. We have been searching for you. Marcus tightened his grip on the blaster. Yeah, well, she's busy. Come back later. The masked figure ignored him, stepping closer to Ilara. Your time is over, princess, the figure said calmly. Surrender, and your death will be swift. Ilara's eyes narrowed. And if I refuse? The figure tilted their head slightly. Then your world will burn, as it did before. Marcus didn't wait for further threats. He squeezed the trigger, firing a plasma bolt directly at the figure's chest. But the bolt never made contact. The masked figure raised their hand, and the plasma froze midair, hovering inches from their palm before dissolving into harmless sparks. Marcus's eyes widened. Okay, that's new. The figure's gaze shifted to Marcus for the first time. You are irrelevant, they said coldly. Before Marcus could react, the figure raised their hand again, and a wave of unseen force sent him flying backward. He crashed against the chamber wall with a grunt. The wind knocked from his lungs. Ilara. Marcus groaned, struggling to push himself up. Ilara stepped forward, standing between Marcus and the figure. You should not have come here, she said, her voice steady but laced with fury. The air around her shimmered, the golden veins beneath her skin pulsing brighter as energy crackled in her palms. The masked figure paused, sensing the shift in power. You have been weakened, they said, though Marcus detected a trace of uncertainty. Perhaps, Ilara replied. But I am still Zetherian. With a flick of her wrist, golden tendrils of energy lashed out, striking the figure and sending them sprawling across the chamber floor. The masked operative writhed, their cloak disintegrating as Ilara's energy coiled around them. Marcus coughed, managing to stand. Next time, I shoot first and ask questions later. Ilara didn't respond. She stepped toward the figure, her eyes glowing fiercely. Tell the Velner, she said coldly. If they wish to find me, I will be waiting. Betrayal and sacrifice. The masked figure lay motionless, golden energy crackling around their body as Ilara stepped closer. Marcus could see the tension in her shoulders, the faint tremble of her hands as she controlled the raw power coursing through her. She wasn't just holding the operative down. She was testing them, waiting to see if they would lash out again. But something didn't feel right. Ilara, that's enough, Marcus said cautiously, lowering his blaster. They're not moving. Ilara's gaze didn't shift from the operative. The golden light in her eyes flickered dangerously. They're not dead, she replied coldly. This is not over. Marcus frowned. He took a step forward, raising his hand toward her shoulder but stopping short. He wasn't sure if touching her in this state was a good idea. Ilara, I get it. These Velner freaks tried to kill you, but we need answers more than we need revenge. She didn't respond. The glow around her hands pulsed brighter, and Marcus felt the air shift. He could taste the metallic charge in it. Ilara, Marcus said more firmly. Let them go. For a long, tense moment, neither of them moved. Then, finally, Ilara exhaled slowly. The energy dissipated from her hands, and the tendrils that held the operative loosened, allowing their limp body to crumple against the floor. Marcus sighed in relief. Thank you. Ilara turned slightly, casting him a sidelong glance. You trust too easily, Marcus, she said, but her tone lacked the edge it held moments before. Marcus crouched beside the unconscious figure, nudging them lightly with his boot. The cloak had disintegrated under Ilara's energy, revealing a slim, humanoid body beneath, scared, worn, and unmistakably alien. Friendly face, Marcus muttered. Guess they don't make Velnar agents like they used to. But as Marcus examined the figure closer, something caught his attention, a faint shimmer along the operative's wrist. He squinted, reaching down to pull at the material. It was a holographic projector. Marcus activated it, and a familiar face flickered to life in the projection. His stomach dropped. Ren, Marcus whispered, his voice laced with disbelief. The image hovering above the projector showed Ren, Marcus's oldest friend and crewmate, the person he trusted most in the galaxy. Ilara's expression darkened. You know him. Marcus stood abruptly, shoving the projector into his pocket. It doesn't make sense. Ren wouldn't. Wouldn't what? Ilara's eyes narrowed. Betray you? Marcus's mouth opened, but no words came out. Trust is fragile, Marcus, Ilara said softly, stepping beside him. You must be certain of who stands at your side. Marcus's heart pounded. Ren had been with him for years, through failed expeditions, skirmishes, and narrow escapes. If Ren was working with the Velner, it changed everything. Before Marcus could process it, a sharp alarm blared from his scanner. His hand shot to his belt, pulling the device free. Multiple life forms inbound. Marcus swore under his breath. They know we're here. Ilara's eyes flashed. The scout was a decoy, she realized. Marcus spun toward the entrance of the chamber, raising his blaster. We need to move. Now. But Ilara remained still, her gaze fixed on the unconscious operative. Ilara, Marcus barked. Finally, she turned, her golden eyes softening. They will not stop, Marcus. Even if we escape, they will hunt me until this galaxy falls into shadow. Marcus's grip on the blaster tightened. Then we keep running. We figure this out together. A faint smile crossed Ilara's lips, but it didn't reach her eyes. You misunderstand. Before Marcus could ask what she meant, the ground trembled violently, causing stone to crack along the walls of the chamber. Marcus stumbled, catching himself against the pedestal that held the crystalline core. Ilara stepped toward the core, placing her hand gently against its surface. The lines of golden energy that once flickered faintly now blazed brightly, illuminating the entire chamber. Ilara, what are you doing? Marcus demanded, panic rising in his chest. She didn't answer immediately. I am activating the temple's final defense, Ilara said quietly. Marcus's eyes widened. Wait, final defense. What does that mean? The temple will collapse, Ilara explained calmly. The energy core will implode, preventing the Velner from retrieving what they seek. Marcus's stomach twisted. You can't be serious. You'll die too. Ilara's gaze softened as she turned to face him. It is a necessary sacrifice. Marcus stepped forward, grabbing her wrist. Like hell it is. For the first time, there was emotion in her eyes. Regret. You are brave, Marcus, she said softly. But bravery alone cannot stop them. If I survive, they will not relent. This is the only way. Marcus shook his head violently. We'll find another way. There's always another way. Ilara. She placed her free hand against his chest, over his heart. The golden energy beneath her skin faded slightly, her touch warm but fleeting. Thank you for waking me, she whispered. Before Marcus could stop her, the pedestal erupted with light, and a shockwave burst through the chamber, throwing him backward. His vision blurred as the temple walls cracked and collapsed inward. Ilara, he shouted, scrambling to his feet. Through the haze, he saw her standing beside the core, her figure barely visible through the blinding light. And then, in an instant, she was gone. The temple crumbled around Marcus as he fled toward the surface, the roar of destruction echoing behind him. When he finally emerged beneath the starry sky, the ground beneath him trembled one last time before falling silent. Marcus stood in the moonlight, breathless, staring at the ruins of the temple. Ilara, he whispered. He didn't know how long he stood there, but as the first Velnar ships descended through the clouds, Marcus clenched his fists. This isn't over. A new beginning. Marcus sat on the edge of a jagged cliff, the cold wind of Lithar's barren surface cutting through his tattered jacket. Behind him, the ruins of the ancient temple lay silent, reduced to little more than scattered stone and dust. The once glowing carvings were extinguished, and the crystalline core that had pulsed with Ilara's energy was gone, buried beneath the rubble. The stars above him flickered like distant candles, indifferent to the destruction that had unfolded below. Marcus's gaze never left the horizon, where the faint outline of Velnar ships hovered in the upper atmosphere, waiting, watching. They had not descended. Not yet. Marcus knew why. Ilara, he whispered. Her name felt heavy in his throat, like a weight he couldn't shake. She was gone. The temple's collapse had taken her with it, And now Marcus was left to pick up the pieces, if there were any left to pick up at all. He clenched his fists, knuckles turning white. The memory of Ilara standing beside the crystalline core, her golden eyes calm even as the temple fell apart around her, replayed in his mind like a curse. She had chosen to stay behind. She had chosen to sacrifice herself. And Marcus hated it. A low hum snapped him from his thoughts. His handheld scanner flickered to life at his side, and Marcus pulled it free, frowning as he stared at the display. Unidentified signal detected. Proximity, 200 meters. Marcus rose slowly, gripping his blaster out of habit as he scanned the area. The signal pulsed faintly, emanating from beneath the rubble of the temple. His heart leaped. Without hesitation, Marcus slid down the slope of the cliff, his boots skidding over loose rocks as he made his way toward the ruins. Dust still hung in the air, swirling lazily in the dim light. He dropped to his knees, pushing aside fallen stone and shattered crystal. The scanner's signal grew stronger, guiding him toward the temple center. Marcus's hands trembled as he uncovered a small metallic sphere buried beneath the debris. The sphere was cracked but still pulsing faintly with golden light. "Ilara," Marcus whispered again, cradling the device carefully. Before he could react, the sphere flickered and a faint projection emerged above it. A hazy, translucent figure. It was Ilara. Marcus's breath caught in his throat. The projection was faint, barely stable, but Ilara's image gazed at him with the same calm intensity he remembered. Her golden eyes softened as she spoke. "Marcus." His grip tightened around the sphere. "Ilara. What happened? I fought you. I did what I had to." Ilara interrupted gently. "The core's collapse was necessary to stop the Velner from tracking me further. But I could not leave you with nothing." Marcus swallowed hard, shaking his head. "But you're gone." "I am here," Ilara said, placing her hand over her chest, though her form flickered slightly. "Not as I was, but I remain." Marcus stared at the projection in disbelief. "Is this you? Or just some recording?" he asked quietly, afraid of the answer. Ilara's expression softened. "I am still myself, Marcus. This projection is only temporary, a fragment of my consciousness stored within the temple's core before it collapsed." Marcus exhaled, relief washing over him in waves. "So you're alive?" "In a way," Ilara replied. "But I cannot exist as I once did. Not yet." Marcus lowered himself onto a nearby stone, cradling the sphere carefully in his lap. "I thought I'd lost you," he admitted, his voice rough. "You did not," Ilara said gently. "I am grateful to you, Marcus. You awakened me when no one else could. And though my body is gone, my essence endures." Marcus's gaze drifted toward the horizon, where the Velner ships lingered like vultures. "They're still out there," he said grimly. "They won't stop until they find you." Ilara's projection stepped closer, though Marcus knew she wasn't truly there. "They fear what I represent. As long as the last hair of the Zetherian Empire exists, the Velner's dominance is not absolute." Marcus scoffed. "So we just keep running?" "No," Ilara said firmly. "We rebuild." Marcus blinked, glancing up at her. "Rebuild? The temple's gone. Your people. They are not all lost," Ilara interrupted. "There are remnants of the Zetherian Empire scattered across the galaxy. If we find them, we can unite them. The Velner's strength lies in division, Marcus. Together, we may stand a chance." Marcus considered her words carefully, staring down at the flickering sphere in his hands. "And what about you?" he asked. "How do I bring you back?" Ilara smiled faintly. "When the time is right, I will return. But for now, I will guide you as best I can." Marcus couldn't help but chuckle, shaking his head. "Great. I get to be the guy carrying a cosmic princess in his pocket." Ilara raised a brow. "Would you prefer I left you to deal with the Velnar alone?" Point taken. Silence lingered between them, but this time it felt different. Lighter, almost hopeful. Marcus rose to his feet, tucking the sphere safely into the pouch at his side. The wind howled softly around him as he gazed up at the stars. "All right," Marcus said, adjusting the strap of his gear. "Where do we start?" Ilara's projection flickered beside him, her gaze following his toward the horizon. "There is an old Zetherian outpost not far from here," she said. "It is hidden, but I can lead you there." Marcus nodded. As he began walking toward his ship, Ilara's light followed him, and for the first time since he'd crashed on Lithar, Marcus didn't feel alone. The galaxy was vast and dangerous, but now, together, they had a chance.